There
Okay.
you go.
All right, there you go. Sorry about that, guys. I had my mic on mute, and you guys see me okay and everything.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, good, good. Well, everyone, I am Joe DeHoyos, the host of Beyond the Woodline, and of course, I have my trusty sidekick, Shannon Rogers. Not the other
What's
Shannon. We don't do mess with the other Shannon no more. But yeah, we got Shannon Rogers. Uh, and already we have one crazy guest in here. I don't know if you can read the comments,
Hey,
Jeff.
Lupe.
Lupe says, "Hey, Vato Locos."
Orale, vato.
Yeah,
That's my brother right there, Lupe. Man, that's my
yeah,
brother.
yeah. I've been lucky to go out with him a couple of times here recently. So yeah, we went out with the woods, and I know I showed you those prints that we found and I
Yes.
casted. Yeah, yeah. It was nothing definitive, but it was certainly interesting. To always find something like that. Um,
When you find something like that, and then you can maybe corroborate it with some sounds from the area or something like later on, you go back to the area and keep finding things. It
right.
just adds to the overwhelming circumstantial evidence.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, actually, what got us to that location anyway was a friend of ours, Walter. Lupe actually met him too now, and they're pretty good friends now too. And he actually had an encounter out there. He was with a paranormal team out there, and they came across these creatures, and they got surrounded by about six of them, and they were throwing rocks and sticks and logs at them. And the one he saw, Jeff, we went back and measured a spot where he saw it on the tree. There was like a little white fungus spot. It was 9.5 feet tall. Yeah, which is crazy for down here, especially down here.
Exactly. 'Cause
Yeah,
down here, most of them that I've come across that were able to verify height on are between 6 foot and 7 foot. Like that 7 foot mark is like a magic number
Yeah.
around here. A little bit over, a little bit under, but that 7 foot's kind of a magic number.
right. And yeah, well, a lot of the witnesses I talked to, always like 6.5 feet tall, right in that area. Um, but he was literally standing on the other side of the creek from this creature when it was peeking out over the tree at him, and he said that. He knew he had all he had was like a 9 millimeter on his hip. He goes, "Nah, I'm not gonna do nothing. This thing would piss it off." And yeah, they got the hell out of here. So we've been going back to that spot. We've got some pretty good vocals. I think I've even sent you that was growls here a while back, and you had told me the same thing. Lupin told me that because it was in January, and you were like, it sounded like a gator, but it was way too early to be gators.
Yeah, way too early in the year. Especially that for the temperatures that we had been having
Right.
before that audio was taken. It's like, if we'd been having our East Texas, 70-degree January, you could say, okay, maybe a gator was already out. But
Right.
when we've been having sub-freezing temperatures week in and week out, it just wasn't very viable for any of our large reptiles to be out.
Right. Yeah, if anyone doesn't know Jeff actually had an encounter with a Bigfoot many years ago. I don't know how long ago was that, Jeff?
Well, I've had two face-to-face encounters. One was in 1986, and the other one was, man, it's been about 6 or 7 years ago now.
Right. Okay. Yeah, and
I'm still waiting for mine.
yeah. I need to get Shannon out there. But what people also don't know is Jeff is as good as a woodsman as they come. He's very familiar with animal sounds and animal tracking. That's why anytime I come across something, I always make sure I send it to Jeff. If I send it to Lupe, the first thing Lupe tells me, did you send it to Jeff yet? I said, I haven't sent it to him, but I will.
That's a compliment.
Yeah,
Well,
man.
see, that's where I got I cut my teeth on things. I went to school for animal science in college and stuff like that. I'm pretty much known around where I live as the best veterinarian practicing without a license.
Right.
Everybody brings their animals to me or calls me when they have a sick or hurt animal they can't afford to go to a vet. They call me, and I'm over there doctoring and sewing up and doing everything else. And my work with Chester Moore and Texas Fish and Game magazine. I've been an outdoor writer for many, many years, and things like that. It just, added to my curiosity, because once you know just about every animal that's in your woods, that's what I always say to people. Before you start chasing animals that are the rarest, most difficult to find, undocumented, blah, 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 all of that, get to know what's there naturally. Get to know the noises they make. Get to know the structures they make to live in. Get to know all of the sign and all of the things that they do before you go out there and say, oh, this was made by Bigfoot. This sound was Bigfoot. This track was Bigfoot. This everything, Bigfoot did this. Bigfoot did this. Well, 99% of the time, Bigfoot didn't do it. But there's that 1%. And if you already can recognize that 99% of animals that belong there, then when you find that 1%, just like you found that footprint, well, you ask yourself, okay, who's been out here barefooted, running around in these woods? Is it really logical for somebody to have came and done that in the past week?
Right.
If it's not, been really difficult, then you start saying, I can investigate this as a possible cryptid piece of evidence.
Right. Yeah. And even there, you have to still be careful not to just keep that on your mind, because that's all you'll think about, And it's the same thing as like when you go out in the woods and you hear something strange, you need to investigate what that sound actually is, and don't just say, well, that's got to be a Bigfoot because I never heard it before. Because even now, I've heard fox and even bobcat make some strange noise, and I send it to people, and they'll tell me, no, that was a fox or that was a bobcat, or even owls for that example. I don't think people realize that owls can scream just like a chimpanzee sometimes, and if you don't know what it is, that'll scare you.
I remember last weekend.
There are so many noises. Go ahead.
So I'm so sorry. No, he said owl. It just reminded me of when we were in Alva, Oklahoma, the weekend before last, and I was with Don Daughtry and Gary Woodward and Crystal and Stephen Woodard. An owl tried to attack Stephen twice. I was sorry. That made me laugh, because if you have the visual of him like it coming on his head and I'm freaking out, it was funny. But no, I respect that you do that you have the experience and know your animals in the woods. That's probably why I'm pretty sure that's why they call on you, is because you are educated.
William says, does Jeff think that the Bigfoot creature's behavior conforms to what he knows about animal behavior, even a large, intelligent predator?
A lot of your reported sightings, a lot of the behavior, it really fits right in, not just with predatory behavior, but I like to classify Bigfoot as a megavore, not an omnivore, herbivore, or anything else. They're a megavore, because not only will they eat plants and animals, but they will eat everything they can come into contact with, because they have to support such a large body mass. So they're not just a predatory animal, and they're very wary, just like the mountain gorilla. The mountain gorilla, was a myth. It was a mythological creature until the 20th century.
Right.
People don't think that, it's been only excuse me if I get this wrong, but like 120 years, 130 years ago or whatever, that the mountain gorilla was actually discovered when somebody killed one and brought it back. But up until then, it was a myth.
Right.
And how they behave, their reclusiveness and their behavior in general is very similar to what we see, or what we think we see, in Bigfoot, because they're so elusive. But I think our Bigfoot creatures are much more intelligent than the mountain gorillas, even much more intelligent than a chimpanzee. I believe that through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of years of interaction off and on with mankind, they've learned that mankind kills and destroys everything it touches.
Right.
Therefore, they stay away from us, and they go to the nth degree to stay away from us.
Yeah. As Lipper said, it took about 30 years to prove the gorillas existed. Yeah.
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 Exactly.
The same goes for the koala, right? It took them a long time to actually prove that koalas existed. Because I mean, not koalas, the pandas. You know,
And all of your large species like that, you know, at one time, it's a myth. You know, just like we've proven in the past few years that there's a hybrid species of grizzly brown bears breeding with polar bears.
right.
There's
Right.
a hybridized species, and that sucker is bigger and more dangerous than any bear in the woods.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
up until recently, that was it's a myth. You know, there's no bear like that. Well, somebody killed one, and there it is.
Right. Yeah, I remember seeing that documentary, and the Billy Ape was, I think, is another good example of what you know.
Exactly.
That's a pretty recent discovery. Also, you know, people thought that 6-foot chimpanzee was a myth. You know, yeah. William again says also the giant panda was considered a myth until 1869. Yeah.
Yeah, and people don't realize just how recently 1869 was. Yes,
Right.
we're in the 2000s, but in the scope of time,
Right.
1869, we're talking about just,
3 generations, 4 generations, yeah.
1865, we're talking about Civil War
Right.
and invention of partridges instead of black powder in
Right.
muzzle-loading weapons. And,
Yeah.
you know, that was not that long ago.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to get off the subject, but I kind of wanted to go back. I wanted people to realize that what kind of a heart you have when you talk about taking care of animals and stuff. You post that stuff so much, and Shannon, this guy right here, he literally rescues animals. And you know, people say, "Oh, I rescued an animal today," and I'm not downplaying or discounting any of that. When people go to the pound and rescue an animal, Jeff will take care of an animal on the side of the road and nurse it back to health, whether it's a domestic animal or a wild animal. You know, and I think
People have such a hard time believing. I was raised up. I'm a hunter. I hunt.
Right.
I fish. I trap. I do all of those things. But at the same time, I'll almost die trying to rescue one of the same animals that I might go and hunt.
Right.
But I'll die trying to rescue that animal if it's drowning or got its foot caught in a fence, or, you know, I've been beat up by a deer many, many times getting them out of a fence. Or had a pet owl one time that the Texas Parks and Wildlife gave me permission to try to rehabilitate that had a broke wing.
Right.
And they told me, well, you know, you can just let it die. You know, coyotes have to eat too. But I wanted to rehabilitate it, and they gave me permission.
Right.
And I performed the surgery myself on this owl's wing, used JB Weld as a casting material,
Oh.
and I named it Bubo after the mechanical owl on Clash of the Titans. And she stayed with me for a few months and fed her deer meat out of my freezer every day, and ended up with her razor sharp 2.5-inch long talons in my stomach.
Oh, wow.
And my wife had to pry them out, but we raised her, got her well, and was able to return her to the wild.
Yeah. And on top of all that, he's an amazing cook too. So
Hey, what's your
Yeah.
favorite style of cooking?
What's that?
What's your favorite type, like, style of food to cook? Like, I love Cajun. What's your favorite?
Mm.
Good old
You
home.
know, Southern comfort foods.
There you go. There you go. That's my number
Everything.
2.
I mean, when we're talking about, now I love Cajun cooking, but my Southern comfort foods, you know, just homemade biscuits and gravy and buttermilk cornbread and, you know, stuff. But now I make a mean gumbo.
yeah. Lupus said that you make the best
Comfort
crappie.
food.
Yeah, Lupe
Yeah,
said you
what's
made the
that?
best crappie. That said Lupe said you made the best crappie and hush puppies. And,
Man, I try. I try. Lupe liked them, and that says a lot for me, man. When my loved ones like Lupe and Big Dog and people like that, when they eat what I cook and they come back and say, "Man, that was good," because I know that these guys aren't slouches in the kitchen either.
no, yeah, yeah. I've actually one time we and Lupe went out with a Big Dog, and on the side of the road we pulled over, and he pulled out a little Old Smoky and made some really good ribs. Just on spur of the moment.
Absolutely, man.
Um, but yeah, let's get back to the I guess to the Bigfoot and the cryptid world.
Having
What
problems.
were you actually involved with that before your encounter, or did you have any thought about that kind of stuff?
Before my first encounter, which happened when I was 15 years old, the only exposure to Bigfoot I had was going to the drive-in movie theater back in the 70s with my mom and dad and watching like Creature from Black Lake, and they would run several features. Like they would start playing movies as soon as it would get dark, and they would play them all night long. And so they'd play old movies. So that's where I got to see Boggy Creek. That's where I got to see Boggy Creek 2, all of those shows, Creature from Black Lake, all of that. And that was the only, just cinema was the only exposure that I had to that. And I remember when I was about 12 years old, I went to a book fair. You remember in school, we used to have the book fairs.
Scholastic.
You take like $5, get troll books, that was their title, troll. And you take $5 to school and you could come out there with 10 books. Some of them books were only 50 cents.
Right.
And sometimes I was lucky enough to have $5 and go to that. And I remember I bought a book that was Mysterious Creatures, and Bigfoot was in it, Loch Ness Monster, all of your prominent cryptid creatures were in it. And that kind of was interesting, but up until my first sighting, I really thought of it as science fiction. It was not factual or real to me.
Okay. And then I guess one day the real thing happened. And what was your thought process when you had your first encounter?
My first encounter, we used to go camping all the time. Me and my buddies, we have thousands of acres down on the Sabine River. And growing up, my parents were very adamant about letting my friends and I go down and camp, because they figured if we were camping, hunting and fishing, things like that, swimming in the river, we weren't doing drugs or doing anything, breaking into cars or doing any stupid stuff that teenagers normally do. So mom and dad would take us down there, drop us off at our camp house we had, our little cabin, with, a couple of bags full of groceries, ice chest full of drinks, and they would leave. So some friends and I were camped out. And at night, what would happen is during the day, if we caught fish or anything, we would skin it at our well that we had. It was an old hand pump well. We would skin them there. We would leave their entrails, their guts, by that well. And at night, we'd go back over there with a flashlight and see if there were any raccoons or anything like that, because as a teenager, I sold those hides from raccoons and things to make my extra money. A good raccoon hide in the early 80s was worth $25 or $30, and minimum wage was $3 an hour. So think how long it took you to make $25 at $3 an hour.
Right.
So we had ate our fish, and this was probably getting along about 10 o'clock, 10:30 that night. And I'm like, hey, let's go see if there's any coons over at the well. And my buddies were like, man, we don't want to go. I mean, we're not mad at them like you are. So I grabbed my flashlight and my little .22 rifle, walked about 100 yards from where the camp house was to the well, and I walked over, and as I got to be within about 40, 50 yards, back in the 80s, if anybody can remember back that far, we didn't have flashlights like we have now with the LED bulbs and, all these high lumens where you can shine 2 miles away. We had little 2D or C-cell flashlights with a little yellow bulb, and I mean, you might see 20 or 30 feet. with one of these lights. And if you're lucky, you might have a really good one and you could see maybe 20 or 30 yards. So as I'm walking over, I'm getting within about 30, 40 yards of this, and my light is just starting to illuminate something over those guts. And in my mind, I thought it's either a hog or it's several raccoons that might be eating at that spot. So I start going slower and slower and creeping up. And as I get probably within 25 or 30 feet, whatever it was eating stood up. And it stood up on two legs like a human being. Me being the kid that I was, raised the way I was, I immediately thought this is somebody. Either one, they're playing a trick on me, or two, it's somebody that's not up to any good, because who's going to be out here messing with a bunch of kids out camping? Okay. So I spoke to it and I said, "Mister, I don't know who you are, but I will shoot you." And it just stood there looking at me, and I'm shining this thing in the face with my flashlight. And all I can say is, if you've ever seen the pictures of the old Australian Aboriginals from back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, that's what this looked like in the face. The broad nose, the big lips, the high forehead, that mahogany colored skin on the face, almost an oily texture to it, cracked from the sun. And it just looked at me. And I said it again. I said, "Mister, I don't know who you are, but I will kill you." And I never will forget, it never uttered a word, but it took 3 steps backwards, toe to heel. And when it got into the edge of the woods, it turned and walked away, but it never ran. It just walked away fast. And the thing that struck me later in life, the more I got educated on wildlife, was the fact that there are no animals other than human beings that can walk toe to heel backwards. We don't hardly ever see a bear in East Texas. I've seen 2 in my entire life. Right. Bears do not walk toe to heel. If they do walk, they walk very clumsily, and if they walk backwards, it's very clumsy. It's a very noticeable, very distinct gait when they walk backwards or forwards, either one, on 2 legs. Plus, their bodies look different. Their torsos and things are long, from their waist to their shoulders. Very, very, very long torso in a bear. Something that's more humanoid, from our waist to our shoulders, you're talking maybe, 36 inches. Not 48 inches or something in a bear. So as I got older and more educated in wildlife, I realized that there was no way on earth I saw a bear.
Hey guys, I hate to say this. I'm again having trouble. I think I need to just get rid of my Chromebook and get a regular laptop. Let me go into my cell phone. I'm going to log off and back on. I apologize. I'm really interested in this story, but it's coming across broken, like a bad reception. So okay. I will be right back. I apologize.
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
So what do you think that the creature wanted when he popped up like that night?
It was eating.
Okay.
It knew, and my belief is it knew that well site at that camp was an easy place to get food.
Right.
When we skinned fish, we left a lot of edible materials right there.
Okay.
And if you want a free, easy meal, all it had to do, we were over at the campfire. You could see us over at that campfire fairly easily. Mm-hmm. And I just think it came in and was getting a meal and got carried away as far as eating and didn't notice me walking up, maybe.
Okay.
Or maybe it did not perceive me with any fear, being the fact that I was a kid.
And do you think this was I guess he was a male?
Do what?
He was a male? This particular creature was a male?
I did not notice any breasts on this creature. I wasn't looking for genitalia. If it did have male genitalia, it was not very noticeable.
Right.
And if it had breasts, they weren't noticeable. So it's possible that it could have been a very young creature. Maybe it just did not have that noticeable. But also, I was looking at square in the face.
Right.
You know,
Right.
because the way I was raised up and everything around guns and around, being, surviving basically. When you're looking at something that can possibly hurt you, you're not looking at its chest or its genitals. You're looking at it in the face.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Lupe has an interesting question. He says, if humans are the only animals to have a chin, do Bigfoots have a chin?
The ones that I've seen definitely had a chin.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. I never really thought about that either.
That's a very, very good point.
Right. Yeah. That's a very good question. That makes me kind of stop and think of all the encounters I've heard now and people describing their faces. Even if they don't tell me they have a chin, you can kind of tell in their story that this thing had a chin. So that's an interesting story.
I've heard people ask me, why didn't you shoot it? And I'm like, I was always raised with guns and gun safety, and it's like my dad always taught me, you don't pull a trigger on another human being unless you have to.
Right.
And to me, I was looking at another human being.
Okay.
I wasn't looking at an animal, because at 16 years old, in your mind, what else is standing on two legs, has two arms just like you do, has two eyes, a nose, a mouth that looks like yours? And growing up, we always heard tales of old hermits that lived out in the woods.
Right. Yeah.
We didn't hear tales of Bigfoot, but, you got to watch out. There's no hermit that lives down there by such and such creek. And that old hermit that lives down there by that creek, you got to watch it, that hermit to get you. And so that's what was in my mind is, this was somebody that might be living off out in the woods.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And that kind of reminds you of Mike Woolley's impression, right? He said that's why he didn't pull the trigger, because he just felt it was too human or felt like it was a person, right?
Mike and I spent a lot of time together. Mike was like a second father to me. Okay. After my dad passed away, Mike was really there for me. And I love Mike, and there's just no way to say how much. And there's a lot of people feel the same way.
Right.
I know Lupe, for one, feels the same way about Mike. But we spent a lot of time talking about his encounter. And it's just like he said to me one day. He said, the words that I said were so prophetic about nothing else in these woods is supposed to have a face.
Right.
There's no other animal in the woods of Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, anywhere you can name that has a face. Two eyes, a nose, a mouth like us. Other things have a snout,
Right.
Deer have a snout, dogs have a snout, wolves, coyotes, raccoons, you name it. Every other animal that is in the woods either has a beak or a snout.
Right.
And when you're looking at something with a face, in your mind, it's human.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's a common theme. Everyone says that. Well, not everyone, but a lot of people do say that. That this creature had a face. And so it's just kind of hard to, I guess, pull the trigger at that point. Do you blame?
It's very hard. If you've ever been in the military or ever been in law enforcement or anything like that, and ever actually had to look down the barrel of a weapon at another human being, it takes on a different meaning.
Right.
Looking down the barrel at one of these creatures that is another, to you, it's another human being because of the way they look.
Right.
And it really takes on a different meaning.
I bet, yeah.
So, do you think that some of these creatures are aggressive and some just aren't aggressive, or do you think it just depends on whatever's going on or their disposition?
I think they're just like any other creature, because there's aggressive dogs, there's aggressive cats, there's aggressive people. Then there's people that are good-natured, dogs, cats, every kind of animal. I've had deer that would just walk up to like another deer while I'm watching them and just attack them
Right.
for no reason. You know, and you're sitting there going, these are deer. They're supposed to be like the timid little creatures of the forest, but this deer walked up to another one and just attacked it.
Right.
Or would walk up to another animal, like a pile of corn, and there's a raccoon eating, and this deer walked up and just plowed over the raccoon with its horns or something. So they're good. I don't want to say good and bad, but there's aggressive and non-aggressive creatures in every animal species.
Right.
Right.
And, you know, and yeah, and you know, another good example are dolphins. People look at dolphins as these docile, peaceful creatures, but there are aggressive dolphins. People do get attacked by dolphins. You know.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
You got to think about this: killer whales are
Right.
basically a big dolphin.
Right. Yeah.
They're all cetaceans.
And Lupe had another question here. So if it has a chin, are they closer to human than ape? What do you think about that?
I believe, this is my personal belief, that they are more along the lines of a relic hominid, a human, than they are an ape. But then we have to look, there's 0.0004, I believe, percent DNA difference between a human being and a chimpanzee. But that 0.004% difference is a huge difference. When we talk about DNA, a 4/10,000ths of a percent might as well be 3,000%.
Right.
Because there's such a big difference. It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we've got creatures like Bigfoot creatures that look so much different. We've got dogman creatures. Everybody, oh, it's a dogman. It had a snout. Then we have goat man. We have all of these different creatures. They're all in the Bigfoot spectrum, but they look different. Why do they look different? Well, Chinese people don't look like European people. Hispanics don't, you know, we've got Hispanics that have Spanish DNA that don't look like the Hispanic people that have more of your native peoples from Mexico DNA. There's so much difference in how people look. You know, Scottish don't look like the Irish. The Irish don't look like the Germans. You know, there's just a huge, huge difference in how we look, but we're all human beings. We all can interbreed with one another. There's Africans, and when we say Africans, oh my gosh, you have Egyptians that don't look like Ugandans.
Right.
But they're all Africans. They're all from the continent of Africa.
Hey,
so
South
when we're talking
Africa.
about Bigfoot, we're talking about Bigfoot creatures that could have as much difference in their appearance being from Colorado as one does from being from Texas. The ones that are from up north, Minnesota, places like that deal with cold climates.
Right.
They look so much different than those ones down here in Florida, Louisiana, and Texas that are your smaller skunk ape type, Sabine thing type creatures. They're the same creature, but they're from different regions and they look and act differently.
Right. So what is your take on Dogman? You think it's just a big baboon, or you think it's an actual canine?
I think, in my opinion, Dogman is a Bigfoot type creature that has a different snout, a different face, they have either through inbreeding, crossbreeding, or genetic, whatever their genetic makeup is, they just have a different appearance. You know, we think about this. As human beings, we have people that are born every day that are 3 foot tall, biggest they're ever going to be. They have different birth anomalies, achondroplasia. You have primordial dwarfism, things like that they're born with. Then we turn right around and have people that can be born into the same family that are like Shaquille O'Neal or Wilt Chamberlain or people like that we're all the same species, but one guy looks totally, totally different than another.
Right.
There are whole generations of families that live in the Appalachian Mountains that if you look at them, they don't even hardly look human. There are people that had the blue skin that were blue because of some dietary anomaly or whatever. Their skin was actually blue.
Yeah, I remember reading about that. Yeah, I forgot all about that.
Just like if you eat too many carrots and that's all you eat, your skin's gonna turn orangish, you know?
Exactly. A lot of people that eat a lot of seafood with iodine in it, their skin will have more of a red appearance to it. Flamingos. The reason flamingos are pink is because of what they eat.
Right. Yeah.
So our environment, our diet, our genetics all plays a big deal. Just human beings, some people have big noses, some have big chins, some have big lips, no lips, high foreheads, no foreheads. You know, big ears. There's so many things that play in on how we look. Right. And I think these creatures, being that there are, in my opinion, there are far fewer of these creatures on Earth than what some people will have you believe, because they make a lot of money off of you believing that there's a Bigfoot behind every tree. So I'm in the belief, instead of there being hundreds of thousands of these creatures living in North America, I think we're talking about thousands, not hundreds of thousands.
Right.
And I think that we have a lot of creatures that live in small, isolated pockets, and between breeding and inbreeding and things like that, they just have a certain look to them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's all valid points. I think they're all people believe that too, for the most part. You know, you have some people who kind of believe outside the realm of that, and that's probably what we would call the woo. What are your thoughts on people who say that they've seen these things jump through portals, they've seen them vanish, they've seen them cloak? There's a lot of reports about that. Can you dismiss all that?
You know, I don't like to tell someone that their encounter is invalid. I don't like to tell them that they didn't see what they saw. I hate to do that, but there comes a line that has to be drawn in the sand. As an experienced woodsman, I can disappear.
Right.
I can use terrain. I can use shadows. I can use foliage. I can use things. I can take 2 steps in either direction, and if you're not looking directly at me, even if you blink, you may think, man, he just gone.
Yeah.
I've watched deer where deer were coming across an open field, and I'm sitting there looking at this same spot for 3 hours and never see anything come out of the woods. And all of a sudden, in the middle of a field, there's a deer standing there.
Right.
That deer used terrain, shadows, and its knowledge of the vegetation and topography to move undetected and unseen.
Right.
That's their terrain, yeah.
Yeah, I've had deer step out of the woods, and the time it took me to raise my rifle and look through my scope, the deer was gone. The deer didn't disappear. It was just gone.
Right.
So I think that, and I also do believe in paranormal Bigfoot creatures. If we can have ghosts and apparitions, we've all heard stories of, cats, dogs, apparitions of different animals, that old cat that haunted the feed mill, somebody saw that cat for 60 years down there at the old feed mill or something. Well, it may not necessarily be a flesh and blood creature that they saw. It may actually be a residual haunting. Mm-hmm. Maybe a Bigfoot creature traveled that path on that trail for so many years that it left a residual energy and left a haunting there. Maybe. I'm not going to dismiss. I don't like woo, for the simple fact we need to prove that these creatures exist before we prove that they have super abilities. They have superhero-like abilities. We need to prove that the Jedis exist before we prove they're wizards, so to speak. Because how would it have looked if Henry Ford would have told everybody that one day he's going to invent a car that can travel 236 miles an hour and, you know, have all of these stuff like a Shelby Cobra Mustang or something like that.
Right.
Before he even invented the first Model A or Model T, any of those that could go like 8 miles an hour. They would. You're crazy. You're crazy.
Yeah. So
before we say these creatures can disappear at will, they can do a Klingon cloaking thing. They will go through portals. One, we've never proven that portals exist or Bigfoot exists beyond a shadow of a doubt. So you're throwing Bigfoot going through interdimensional portals, and none of them have been proven. So you're just compounding the absurdity of the claim whenever you say that Bigfoot went through portals. And I'm not saying that they didn't see it. I'm just saying proving that is going to be 1,000 times more difficult than just proving you saw a Bigfoot.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you on that. And the funny part about that is that I've known people close to me, and I'm talking like family members, that have told me that they've seen these creatures just vanish right in front of their eyes. You know, and I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't think what you saw was a Bigfoot that I'm looking for, was a flesh and blood creature. I'm not saying you didn't witness that, and I would never tell someone that they didn't witness something, especially if I didn't see it. You know, but
and their perception of what they've seen as well.
Right.
But you know, there's things that happen that can happen. One of my theories that I work on is the fact that possibly these Bigfoot creatures can have some sort of a manipulative effect on the bioelectric field.
Right.
Like sharks do, the echidna, platypus, things like that. They can sense the bioelectric field and electrical fields. That's one way I think that these creatures stay away from trail cameras, is because they can sense this electrical field.
Right.
If you put a bunch of batteries in something and stick it out on a tree, and it's got an infrared sensor, it's putting off an electrical field.
Right.
And
something they can sense that we can't.
Yeah, there are documented animals that can sense this. One study that was done here in the state of Texas on coyotes proved that in a 2-year study, not one alpha male coyote was filmed on a trail camera. They got subordinate males, they got females, they got everything, but the alpha males were never filmed in 2 years. Right. They avoided trail cameras like the plague. How did a coyote avoid a trail camera? An alpha male coyote avoid it?
Like
did he smell it?
Right.
Did he see it? Did he sense it? Well, if a coyote can sense it, smell it, whatever, why can't a Bigfoot?
Right. Yeah, and I've seen plenty of pictures. You can look online of coyotes, deer, raccoons, all kinds of animals actually coming up to the camera, like sniffing it. You know. You know, animals know that they're there. Yeah.
I put out so many cameras every year in different locations and go through the process of. I mean, I don't wear any kind of colognes. I don't bathe in any unnatural type soaps. I don't use anything with perfume on it. When I go to the woods, I take care I actually mix my own scent elimination products and use natural scents like sweet gum leaves and things like that to keep my cameras in those until I put them on the trees and things like that. And yet you get a picture, there's a deer with his nose stuck in the camera. Or, you know, the blackout cameras that have no flash whatsoever, but you get a picture of a deer or a raccoon or something looking right into the lens.
Mm-hmm.
They just know it's there.
They can feel the energy of it. Yeah, because
somehow.
Like I said, just like a dog whistle, you know, we can't hear what dogs can. But we have different senses, you know, and every species is at heightened differently.
Yeah, that's how they survive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, you know, too, we have our own programmed responses in our body. Our fight or flight response is huge.
Yeah.
When that adrenaline starts pumping, just think about it. You're in the woods and you see something that is not supposed to exist, a monster. You've been taught that this is a monster through movies and television and books. This is a monster, and you see it, and it's 7 foot tall. It weighs 450 pounds. It looks like something out of a Lord of the Rings movie coming to kill you. Your fight or flight response is going nuts, and you're going to have to decide, how fast do I need to run, or how hard do I need to fight not to die? Right. Your mind at that point is going nuts. Your synapses are firing. Electrical impulses are going off the charts. So what are you doing? What are you seeing? Well, 2 seconds becomes 30 seconds, or 30 seconds becomes 2 seconds at that same time. And so something disappearing and just vanishing into thin air, you really may or may not have a concept of how much time passed.
Right.
While you were standing there looking at that.
In a traumatic incident, or like even almost like really bad car wreck, like I can make something that might be 1 second will seem like a minute and a half for me. It just, everything slows down. I analyze what's going on. Yeah, so like we have, everything in nature is different in the way we perceive things. We slow it down in our senses and everything. So yeah, I see what you're saying, if that makes sense.
I was a deputy sheriff for a while, and I interviewed a lot of people after car wrecks, shootings, just all kinds of domestic violence and all of these things. And these people sometimes were on the phone with our 911 operators for 10 minutes before help got to them. And when you get there and talk to them, and they're like, I was on the phone for half an hour with your dispatch, or I've only been on the phone with them for 5 minutes. Thank you for getting here so fast.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of these people that are going through a traumatic incident have no true concept of the amount of time that has passed.
It's all energy felt, yeah.
And it's funny when you mentioned that about being a police officer. I have several friends who are police officers, and this subject comes up, and I ask them, I said, why do people see things different? And they told me the same thing. You can have people witness a crash. You can have 20 people witness it, and you'll have 20 different stories on what happened, because everyone sees things different. Everybody reacts different. Everyone's adrenaline is different.
Perception and experience, previous trauma, everything affects the psyche of the mind, and what you see visually, all your senses are affected when something comes down to the wire, and you're affected that way.
Yeah. Some people are calm, cool, and collected. Others are just, their adrenaline's going, and they're almost, chaotic. Trying to get a statement from them. So yeah, everybody handles.
Good example for this is going to the doctor's office. My wife goes with me into every visit because I hate going to the doctor.
But you go, that's important.
What she hears and what I hear may not be the same thing.
Yeah.
And we're coming out of that doctor's office, and I'm shaking my head going, oh my gosh, the doctor said blah, blah, blah. And she's going, hold up. He said blah, blah, blah. You got it. You didn't quite get it right. You got upset or got excited when the doctor said something. And when the doctor, said a specific thing, I didn't hear anything after that. He sounded like Charlie Brown's teacher. Wah, 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 wah.
Well, because you perceived on emotions, and that's what happens a lot with encounters, whether it's paranormal, whether it's cryptid, whether it's, Bigfoot, UFOs. A lot of people respond that way because it's, it's and what their perception really is and what really happened, and that's why it's awesome when you have multiple people that can see a situation.
Exactly.
So, we got about 10 minutes left, but I did want to ask you about, we kind of touched about on the paranormal, and I know you at one time, I guess you did some investigations on that, or were a ghost hunter of sorts, or what was that like? That's Shannon's thing right there. Shannon loves the paranormal.
My foray into the paranormal started also at a very young age. I was friends with some guys who were actually Satan worshipers. I mean, they made no qualms about it. We played games. Right. They were, when I say they were my neighbors, I lived so far out in the country that I had to ride my motorcycle about 4 miles to my closest neighbor's house in order to visit somebody.
In what
Okay,
state?
Texas.
Okay, Texas. But
And so I would ride my motorcycle. I had a little dirt bike over to these guys' house, and we would play Dungeons and Dragons and Champions and different games, role-playing games. And they made no qualms about being Satanists. And it got to the point we grew up into being teenagers, and they got hardcore enough that I quit being friends with them.
right.
Well, they went off to work, and while they were gone, their parents moved out of the house they were living in, threw all of their belongings into the front yard, and left. I was riding my dirt bike by the house one day, and all of their stuff was in the yard. So I went up there looking, hey, these are my friends, maybe I can salvage some of their stuff. And there were so many books about Satan Wants You was the name of one book. Books about and by Anton LaVey, and all of these different Satanists and Church of Satan, this and that. I'm like, man, I ain't touching none of this crap. So a couple of years passed by. Nobody's lived in this house at all. There's been at times like abandoned pets, things like that show up. My friends that lived on down that same road called one day and said, hey, need your help. This dog came up to our house, growled at my granddaughter. I shot the dog, but I didn't kill it. Need you, if you would, I can't stand the thought of this thing suffering. Would you go find it and take care of it? And I said, sure. So me and a bunch of friends, we loaded up the guns, and I start trailing this blood trail from this dog down through the woods, through the dirt roads and things, and all the way to this house. The blood led to the bedroom that belonged to those two boys, and right through the bedroom window. And as soon as it went through the bedroom window, the blood trail stopped. Well, we hunted this dog, and we finally found it. Whenever I shot this dog, I blew its head off with a 12-gauge shotgun, and it kept attacking. Yeah, it had nothing but a lower mandible, nothing from the upper jaw up, and it was still walking and coming at me. So, 12-gauge shotgun, I turned the whole dog into hamburger meat. We dug a hole. There were 6 of us. We dug a hole. We buried what was left of the dog in a hole. Went back, told the story to my friend's father and everything. We all had a chuckle about it. Man, that was strange. The next day, I'm driving by in my truck, and I can see that the hole that we dug had been dug up. So I stop, pull in, go. The hole is empty. No dog, no nothing in the hole. I look up and I see this. I see just something down toward the barn, and it draws me down toward that barn. And when I get to the barn, I open the barn door, and there are the carcasses of dead animals that are nailed to the wall of this barn. They've been there long enough, they're like dried out, like mummified looking dogs, cats, rabbits, things like that. There's all kinds of satanic carvings and markings carved into the posts in this barn. While I'm in this barn looking around, just the hair stands up on the back of my neck. I get the creepiest feeling I've ever got. I'd look back up toward the house, and the dog that we had killed the day before was standing at the house, looking at me.
Okay, that was a manifestation. Or not a manifestation. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I closed my eyes as tightly as I could, and when I opened them, the dog was standing at the doorway of the barn. It had made a 150-yard trek in about 2 seconds to that barn. I couldn't do anything but close my eyes and pray. I mean, I'm a 17-year-old kid or whatever, so I closed my eyes and I prayed, for deliverance from this evil. And when I opened my eyes, the dog was back up at the house.
Oh, jeez.
And it wasn't a dog. Things can manifest into what they want to appear. And it's what they brought into what they were doing. And I've known people that done that. Sorry, I took my headphones off for a second because I was getting too many visuals of that, and I don't want to bring that to my dreams tonight because it happens. And I'm like, no, I totally feel what you were saying. I was living it. I was seeing it as you were saying it, and that was really intense. Like that would be really traumatic as a 17-year-old. to see that and experience it. So that's what kind of pile drived you into your curiosities of different things being out there. I mean, you can't see stuff like that and you know it's not normal, but is that what really triggered you down the road that you're on right now?
Well, on that, the story gets a little weirder.
Oh, Lord. Okay. Go ahead.
I saw the dog back up at the house, and I continued to pray. And the dog disappeared. Dog was gone. And in my mind, I tell myself, okay, man, you're just down here seeing all this satanic stuff and the animals nailed to the wall. You're seeing things. So I hear some noises coming from outside the barn, and I go out, and there's another little shed outside the barn. I open the shed up, and there are a bunch of puppies that look exactly like the dog we killed. And there's the carcass of the dog that we had killed, and they had dug it up, dragged it down there, and had eaten it. So I went to my truck and retrieved my gun and went down there, and I killed those puppies, dug a hole, buried them. I prayed over burying them and everything, and when I opened the door to come out, because this shed just had a dirt floor and it was sand, actually. When I opened the door to come out of it, that dog was standing back up at the house staring at me, staring a hole through me.
Has anyone that you know have gone to that place and fixed that situation?
Later, I actually became caretaker of this property. Mm-hmm. And people had lived there. There have been 9 families that have lived in that house. Every one of them has either divorced, died, or met with some sort. Some of them have went to prison. Some of them have, not one family that's lived there left there happy.
Still there.
Now the house is a shell. The entire interior of the house is gone. There are no walls standing. It's just a hull of a house. My friends that bought the place and own the place were trying to renovate it. 3 different times, all of their tools were stolen. Every time they tried to start renovating the house, their tools would come up missing. They bought a big, solid steel, unbreakable box, chained it to the concrete pillars of the house, because it's a big brick home. Came back, the locks, which there was no way to bust them, but the locks were missing, box open, tools gone every time. So finally they just said to hell with it and stopped trying to renovate the house.
No, I was just saying, it's still there. It's totally still there. I would love a chance to take a team down there and fix that for somebody.
The people that own it, actually, like last year or whatever, they decided that they didn't want me back there because I was investigating and things like that, and they didn't. I guess they didn't like me doing that. So
maybe they thought you made it worse when it was already bad, anyways. You know, some people don't know how to react to that stuff. You know. Sorry, it's still going on there. I can tell you that right now, heavy and deep, because that's why I took my headphones off. I was like, I don't want to talk about it. I'm feeling it.
What do you think all that was, Jeff? Do you think it was something that I don't know, demonic or Satan itself, or
lower level asshole bad?
I think
shit.
I have a degree in theology from Baptist Christian University. That's where I went to college. And in order to play football there, you had to take theology classes. So through all of my schooling and everything, I know that those boys didn't really know what they were doing. They thought it was fun, and they were playing around, and they opened a doorway and invited something in that attached itself, because one of those young men is now a registered sex offender, and the other one has dropped off the face of the earth, and I haven't been able to find him anywhere through any kind of investigative technique. So they invited something into this world that attached itself both to that property and to them.
All right. Yeah.
It's not good. And anybody that's going to be there is going to get part of it.
Right.
Well, these two guys' parents later opened their own Branch Davidian compound in Gary, Texas.
Wow.
After the,
Jeez.
we got to talk off air sometime. Like, oh my gosh. Like,
I ended up going and they bought about 20 trailer houses, and I retired as a master electrician, actually electrical engineer. So they hired my father and I to come in and do all of the electrical on the compound, wire up all the houses and all of their commune places and all of that. So got a firsthand look at everything that was going on. So these two Satan worshiping boys came from a family of really, well, what do you want to say, fanatical, religious type people. They were very fanatical.
Prior or post? Was it before? I mean, is that their upbringing that made them go different? Or would they after the reflection of what was going on with their kids?
They were always
like that.
The mom and dad were never religious outwardly. Whenever we were, say, first knowing them, the first 5-6 years that we knew them, and then all of a sudden they went like way over the top. Like one day the lady called my mother and was, like trying to pray with my mother on the phone and stuff. And my mom's like, you don't even really know me. Why are you calling me trying to pray with me on the phone? And I don't, it was just a lot of weird things that happened with this family.
Right. Yeah. Jeff, every time I talk to you or message you,
I'm so sorry, guys. I have to go.
Go ahead. You're good. Your show's about over.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. No, I have to go. My son's losing it in the other room at my friend's house. Jeff, I'm going to end real quick. I want to say it was very nice to meet you. I want to chat with you some more because I want to connect with what you were talking about because I've got all kinds of shit going on. Sorry, Joe, I guess. But Joe, I love you guys, and I want to chit chat with you. I'll talk to you guys soon. Okay?
Definitely.
Right,
Bye.
Yeah, Jeff. Every time I talk to you, man, it's like you become more and more interesting, man. It's just like you got a lot of layers to you, brother. I'm sure you probably heard people tell you that, man. But
man, I've had people that have come at me and said, "Oh, he's lying because he's always got a story," and I'm like, I can't help that. I've had crap happen to me. I mean,
you're one of those people. Man,
who it didn't happen.
Yeah, you're just one of those people who lived life, and you've had a lot of stuff come at you, and you certainly never shied away from anything. But dude, it was real good having you on, man, and we were already a little bit past an hour, but it was great talking to you, and
can't thank you enough.
Can't thank you enough, man. And anytime I find something, I'm going to send it to you.
I enjoy it.
Okay, good deal. And everybody in the chat room, especially Lupe. I don't know if Lupe is still there or not. He hasn't been talking, but there he goes. He says, that freaked me out.
Man, I can't say enough, man. Lupe is like, he's like one of them ride or die kind of dudes with me. Me and him been through a lot of water under the bridge, different things, different stuff, but we've always come out on top with each other. And I'm thinking we always will.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, he's quite the character, man. He's a lot of fun to hang out with. I consider him one of my close friends. But all right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for tonight's show. Thank you for joining and thank you for watching. And we'll catch you next week, Mr. Jeff. Thank you once again, buddy.
Thank you for having me on.